Hey audio people, welcome back to the channel. Got an OG for you here, right? A classic, a standard. We've got the GSX Mini from Headamp in for review. I have been very curious about these for a long time, obviously for as long as I've been recently back into the hobby. This has been one of kind of like the standard best solid state amplifiers you can get. It's been around for a while. I was really curious to try it out. Of course, the question is this is like an $1,800 amplifier, so how does it compete with things that are solid state and a lot cheaper? Something like I just did the FIO K7 or the AAA 789, that type of stuff. Where does this thing stack up with those, and how does it compare to a higher dollar, tube amplifier like my Quicksilver? Well, we're going to get into all that here in this video. So stick around for that. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all that stuff if you're interested in more audio and headphone related content, because definitely there'll be plenty of that on the way. So let's dive into the build of this guy. And I would say that it's phenomenally built. This one's kind of like a powder gray color. It's pretty dark. It's subtle. It's really nice. The texture and everything feels just really good on it. No fingerprints here, right? Because we've got like a really nice texture to it. It feels very rugged, just very solidly built. Feels fantastic, honestly. The front panel, you can see what we've got going on there. You've got a really nice volume knob, great knob fill on this guy, and you can even kind of pick which volume knob you get, which is kind of cool. So you can kind of like custom order these from what I can tell. Of course, you've got a 1/4 inch out, you got XLR out, you've got the on-off switch over here, nice toggle switches, high-low gain, preamp, on-off, input, XLR, RCA, all of it straightforward, all of it feels great. I have zero complaints about interacting with this amplifier. As far as inputs, outputs go, I mean, it's pretty standard at this point, right? You've got XLR in, RCA in, and then you've got preamps, XLR out, RCA out. Just uses kind of a regular PC power cable here as well. Again, just simple, beautiful, just a very nice design. I have zero complaints about any of it. Good amount of heft to it. It is rather large. So if I even just grab my tape measure here real quick, we got about 11 inches by about 10 inches deep with the volume knob. So you're going to need a pretty substantial spot on your desk to put this guy, right? Which is maybe one of the downsides to it. But as far as just interacting with it, using it, I think it's fantastic. Feels great. Build is great. All that. Terrific. How does it sound? Honestly, it probably sounds like if you've looked at anything about this amp, I would say it probably sounds like you would imagine it sounds, which means clean, tons of detail, very strong bass, maybe a little bit on the drier side, So I would say, yeah, it is a really nice, clean, solid state amplifier. It puts out tons of power, something like 6 watts into 25 ohms, but then 2 watts at 100 ohms and 1 watt still at 300 ohms. So tons and tons of power on tap for you to use. I don't think you'd have any problem driving any headphones with this guy. I'm just not quite sure that for me, I would put this much money into a solid state amplifier like this. Now, it's probably going to depend on what kind of headphones you've got. It's probably going to depend on what kind of sound that you like. But if you guys have been around at all, I'm leaning a little more into tubes. And I think you get a little more variety when you play around with tube amplifiers than you do with solid state. I mean, if you're looking at just a really clean solid state, there's varying degrees of technicality that you can get. But I think something like the FIO K7 at $200, it does a lot of what this guy does for a lot cheaper. And same with any of the AAA stuff and stuff like that. Like, yes, this guy has a great amount of detail to it and just is super well controlled in everything it does. But honestly, I don't think it's that much better than some of that other cheaper solid state stuff. And that makes it a tougher sell for me. Is it a fantastic amplifier? It is. I I would rather spend that money on different headphones, on a nice tube amp, rolling some tubes, stuff like that. But that's me, right? Like that's my audio journey at this point in time. Every headphone I tried on this guy sounded great. I was listening to the Meze 109s. I was listening to JM Modded Ether CX. I was listening to Verum 1s. I was listening to 660 S2. All that stuff. It all sounded fantastic on this. I just don't know that it sounded that much different or better than when I tried those things on some of those other clean solid states like I'm talking about. And so I think that it's a hard sell for me. That being said, if you're a solid state person and you really like that super clean solid state sound, you don't mind just maybe a touch of dryness in it, which means that it reveals everything well, notes really shore up well, black background, like all that good solid state stuff like this guy has. Again, I just don't know that that's the sound that I'm chasing. But if that's what you're chasing and you've got the money, I mean, this guy's definitely worth a look. It's absolutely a fantastic device. When I compared it with the Quicksilver, I would say that this was a little more incisive, a little more clean and clear, little bit more detail. Not a ton, I wouldn't say, but a little bit more detail. And certainly, like, everything just had kind of like a finality to it where, the black background, the notes ending, very cleanly. It was a little bit wider in its presentation, but I didn't feel like it had quite as much depth as the Quicksilver. The Quicksilver just sounds more organic, more fluid, more warm, right? More lush, if you want to use any of those audiophile terms. This guy, to me, was just clean and crisp. Clean, crisp, and dry. You know what I mean? So if I was going to pull like a wine analogy out here, right, this guy would be like a Pinot Noir, right? Like a dry, crisp, type of a light, like type of a sound, whereas the Quicksilver, is like a heavy, darker red that's got a lot of body to it and, is a little bit fruitier, perhaps a little more flavor to it. Not quite as dry. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good analogy. Maybe it doesn't make sense, but that's what just popped in my head as I was doing it. So GSX Mini, it's a beautiful amp. It's very capable. It's just not the sound I'm looking for. Okay. And that's all right. I'm glad that this is out there with this type of flavor. I'm sure it's going to meet lots of people's needs. It isn't going to make it into my collection, but I am happy that I got the chance to try it. So thanks to the friend of the channel that sent this out. And, feel free to drop alternative opinions down below. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? You heard this? Compared it next to some of those cheaper, clean, solid state things? Do you feel like it's worth the money over those or not? Any info you want to add on that would be much appreciated. As always, I thank you for your time. Consider subscribing if you want more headphone related content. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one.